Chapter 9: The Shifting Tides. The sun had set on Qinghe village, casting long shadows across the peaceful streets. The evening air was cool, and the last remnants of the storm still lingered in the form of scattered clouds in the sky. Yet, despite the calm, an undercurrent of tension was palpable. Something was changing. As the village returned to its normal rhythm, Elon found himself standing at the edge of the river, gazing into the murky water below. It had been days since he descended from Azure Peak, and though the storm had passed, something within him still felt unsettled. The power of the heart of the veil lingered in his chest, a reminder of the choice he had made and the burden that came with it. "It's strange," Elon muttered to himself, his voice lost to the quiet flow of the river. "The storm is over, but it feels like something else is coming." Beside him, Yu Ling stood silently, her eyes fixed on the horizon, the faintest hint of concern in her gaze. "The storm may have passed, but the currents beneath the surface are still shifting," she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of years of experience. "What you rejected, the heart, will not simply disappear. The forces that are drawn to it will always be searching for the next opportunity." Elon's brow furrowed. Mo Ran's words echoed in his mind, as did the memories of the power he had felt on Azure Peak. The heart, despite being gone from his hands, still tugged at him, whispering from the depths of his soul. "You mean it's not over?" he asked, turning to face her. "I thought rejecting it meant the danger was over." Yu Ling's eyes softened, but there was an edge to her voice, a quiet warning in her tone. "The danger has only just begun," she said, her gaze unwavering. "The heart may be gone for now, but its influence is far-reaching. There are many who would seek to control its power, and there are others who may try to harness the fragments of its essence for themselves." Elon felt a chill run through him. He had hoped that his decision would be the end of it, that by rejecting the heart, the storm would pass. But the reality was far more complicated. In the shadows of the world, the wheels of fate were already turning. Far to the west, in a secluded fortress hidden deep within the mountains, Mo Ran stood before a map of the realms, his fingers tracing the intricate paths of power that crisscrossed the world. The heart of the veil was still a piece of the puzzle, and Elon had unknowingly played his part in a much larger game. "The boy is not as naive as I thought," Mo Ran mused, his voice filled with cold amusement. "But he is still just a pawn, a useful one." He turned to face a dark figure standing in the corner of the room, Shen Mei, his trusted lieutenant, who had long been his right hand in matters of shadow and deception. "The heart is no longer in Elon's possession, but its influence is still strong," Mo Ran said, his voice hardening. "He will feel its pull again, I am certain of it, and when that happens, we will be ready." Shen Mei nodded, her eyes gleaming with quiet anticipation. "The balance has shifted," she said softly, her voice like silk. "Elon may have rejected the heart, but its power will still seek him. It is inevitable." Mo Ran's lips curled into a thin smile. "Yes, inevitable. But we will not wait for it to return to us. We will find it ourselves." Elsewhere, in the silent valley, the elder of the valley stood alone in the deep forest, the wind rustling the leaves around him. His ancient eyes were closed, his senses attuned to the subtle currents of energy that moved through the world. The storm had passed, but the veil between the realms had grown thinner, and he could feel it. "The heart's influence is not so easily dismissed," the elder murmured to himself, "and yet the boy's decision has bought us time, for now." The elder's mind wandered back to the ancient scrolls that detailed the path of the heart and the delicate balance between the realms. The heart was not just a power to be wielded, it was a key that could unlock the doors to immortality or bring about destruction. Elon had made the right choice, for now, but the future was still uncertain. The forces of chaos were gathering, and the elder knew that Elon would soon have to face them. "Time is running out," the elder said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "The heart is a force that cannot be ignored for long." Back in Qinghe village, life had resumed its natural pace, but Elon couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't just the lingering presence of the heart, it was more than that. The village, despite its outward calm, was somehow quieter. The people, though they carried on with their work, seemed distant. The familiar hum of everyday life felt off. Elon spent most of his days wandering the village, trying to shake the feeling that he was being watched, as if unseen eyes were always upon him. At times, he caught glimpses of figures moving in the shadows, just out of reach, but when he turned, they were gone. "What's wrong with me?" he muttered under his breath one evening as he sat on the porch of his small home, looking out at the peaceful streets. Yu Ling, who had remained by his side since the storm, watched him from the doorway. "You've chosen a difficult path, Elon," she said quietly, her voice filled with understanding. "The forces at play are not easily seen, but they are always moving, shifting, waiting for the right moment." Elon looked at her, his expression darkening. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this," he admitted. "I thought rejecting the heart would make everything easier, but it feels like the storm is just beginning." Yu Ling walked toward him and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are stronger than you think," she said. "But remember, this path is not about power, it's about balance, and balance is not something you can control, it is something you must learn to live with." As the days passed, Elon began to notice more subtle changes in the world around him. The villagers spoke in hushed tones about strange happenings, distant earthquakes, unusual weather patterns, and rumors of powerful figures moving through the land. It was clear that Mo Rand and other forces were already stirring, preparing for what would come next. And then, one night, as Elon sat by the river, staring into the reflective waters, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a tall, shadowed figure, cloaked in black. Their face was obscured, but their presence was undeniable. "Elon," the figure said, their voice low and calm, "we have been waiting for you." Chapter 10. The Shadow's Call. The air felt colder as the figure emerged from the shadows, their forms sleek and shrouded in a cloak of darkness that seemed to blend seamlessly with the night. Elon's heart raced as his gaze locked onto the mysterious figure standing a few paces from him, their presence like a storm waiting to break. He couldn't see their face, but the air around them seemed charged, as if they carried with them an aura of power and secrecy. "Who are you?" Elon demanded, his voice steady but filled with unease. The figure did not answer immediately. Instead, they stepped closer, their cloak swirling around them like a shadow stretching into the night. Elon could feel a strange energy radiating from them, a deep, almost oppressive force that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. "You already know me, Elon," the figure replied, their voice soft, yet carrying a weight of authority. "Or at least, you should." Elon's brow furrowed in confusion. He knew this voice. There was something hauntingly familiar about it, as if it belonged to someone from his past, someone he had never fully understood. "No," he whispered, his mind racing. "You're—" The figure stepped into the dim light cast by the lanterns along the riverbank, revealing a pair of gleaming eyes beneath the hood, eyes that seemed to pierce into the very depths of his soul. "Yes, Elon," the figure continued, their voice almost a whisper. "I am your past, and I am your future." The cloak swirled again, and suddenly the figure lowered their hood, revealing a face that Elon had only seen in passing before, a face that was now unmistakable. It was Mo Ran. But this was no ordinary encounter. This Mo Ran was different. There was something about him, something that made Elon's chest tighten with an unfamiliar sense of dread. "You," Elon breathed, stepping back, his heart pounding in his chest. "How is this possible?" Mo Ran's lips curved into a faint smile, one that was as cold and calculating as the chill in the air. "You think I'm the same man who waited in the shadows?" Mo Ran's voice was almost mocking. "The truth is, I am much more than that now. I have been many things, and I have seen much. And now it is time for you to see as well." Elon's hands clenched into fists, the familiar sting of anger mixing with confusion. His mind raced, but his body stayed still, rooted to the ground. He had rejected the heart, turned away from its temptation, and yet here was Mo Ran, more powerful, more present than ever. "What do you want from me?" Elon demanded, his voice rising. "I've already made my choice. I rejected the heart. There's nothing left for you to take." Mo Ran's smile widened, but there was no humor in it. Instead, it was a twisted, knowing grin, one that spoke of years of waiting, of careful planning, and of secrets too dark to reveal. "You think rejecting the heart means the end of the game?" Mo Ran's voice dropped to a whisper, his tone laced with dark amusement. "No, Elon. The heart is just one piece of the puzzle. There are many paths, many forces, and many players. The heart has only revealed a fraction of what's to come." Elon's pulse quickened, and he took an instinctive step backward, his gaze never leaving Mo Ran. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. "What game? What's coming?" Mo Ran's eyes gleamed in the darkness, as though the night itself could not contain the storm brewing inside him. "You will find out soon enough," he said softly. "The forces at work in this world are much older, much deeper than you realize. And whether you like it or not, you have already become a part of them. The heart was only the beginning. There are things, ancient things, stirring beneath the surface, things that were bound long ago." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming Elon's senses. The air grew thick with tension, and the ground beneath Elon's feet seemed to hum with an eerie energy. "You will be tested, Elon. The heart was merely a key to something greater. But those who control the key can unlock many doors. And right now, there are doors that you cannot even begin to imagine." Elon's breath quickened, and he shook his head in disbelief. "I don't understand," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "What do you want from me?" Mo Ran's smile faded, his eyes narrowing. "You are the one who chose to turn away, to defy the will of the forces that govern this world," he said coldly. "But defiance has consequences. You may have rejected the heart, but the heart is not easily forgotten. The path you've chosen is one of balance, yes, but balance requires sacrifice. You cannot just walk away from this. You will either find your way back to the heart, or you will fall, and I will be there to collect what remains." A shiver ran down Elon's spine as Mo Ran's words sank in. The weight of the situation was crushing, and yet, in his gut, he felt a growing sense of resolve. He had made his choice, and he would not let Moran or anyone else dictate his fate. "I will never go back to that," Elon said, his voice firm, despite the fear churning inside him. "I won't be a pawn in your game. Not now, not ever." Moran's gaze darkened, his eyes flashing with an intensity that made the very air feel oppressive. "You are already a part of the game, Elon," Moran replied, his voice low and dangerous. "Whether you realize it or not, you have already chosen your side. And when the time comes, you will understand what I mean. Until then..." Moran's form seemed to blur in the shadows, his figure dissolving into the night like smoke in the wind. "I will wait," he called out, his voice echoing through the night. "The game is far from over." Elon stood in stunned silence, his heart pounding in his chest as the last remnants of Moran's presence faded into the darkness. He had rejected the heart, chosen balance, but Moran's words echoed in his mind, haunting him. Had he made the right choice? Could he really escape the forces at work in the world? Or had he already become ensnared in a game far larger than himself? The night seemed colder now, the river's current louder, as if carrying with it the weight of the world's shifting tides. Chapter 11. The Gathering Storm. The night air grew colder, and the stars above were distant, their light faint compared to the dark weight hanging over Elon. His heart still raced from the encounter with Moran, the leader of the Night Lotus cult, the enigmatic figure who seemed to embody something darker than anything he had encountered before. The shadows he left behind lingered in the air like a foul memory, and Elon couldn't shake the feeling that Moran's warning wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. Moran had made it clear. The game was not over. Elon's path, though he had rejected the power of the heart, had already been set on a course he could not easily escape. Balance, the word that had seemed so simple when he had chosen it on Azure Peak, now felt like a chain around his neck. "The storm, it's just beginning," he murmured to himself as he stood at the river's edge, his reflection rippling in the current below. The decision to reject the heart had been a choice to live without domination, without the promise of power that could warp and corrupt. But he now realized that his rejection wasn't the end. It was merely the beginning of a much larger, much darker struggle. The village had returned to a sense of normalcy, but even as the people went about their daily routines, Elon felt the tension in the air. Something was off. The villagers were acting strangely, quieter, more withdrawn, as if they too could sense the shifting currents beneath the surface. At night, Elon often found himself lying awake, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The shadows of the day, of Moran's cryptic warning, of the heart's lingering presence, crept into his thoughts like whispers in the dark. He could feel something coming, something inevitable. But what? And who would stand by him when the storm finally hit? The Night Lotus cult had been a shadow for years, operating in secrecy, pulling the strings from behind the veil. But Moran was no ordinary leader. His hunger for power, his manipulation of the ancient forces, had reached farther than anyone knew. And now, with Elon having chosen his own path, Moran's eyes were on him. But why? What did Moran want with him? What role did Elon play in the larger scheme of things? One morning, several weeks after the encounter by the river, Elon stood in the village square, watching the villagers as they went about their day. The air was still, the market full of the usual chatter, the sound of merchants hawking their wares, the rhythmic motion of life in the village. But as he moved through the crowd, he caught snippets of conversation, small hints of unease. "Did you hear? There's strange talk from the west. Reports of strange forces moving in the mountains, people vanishing. I heard there's a cult in the area, the Night Lotus, they say. They'll take anyone who stands in their way. And the storms haven't stopped. There's a strange energy in the air." Elon's heart clenched. It was as if the village, in its peace, had already begun to feel the weight of the storm he had set in motion. Later that evening, Yu Ling found him by the river again, staring out at the water again. "You're troubled," she said softly, her voice quiet but perceptive. She had been watching him for weeks now, ever since their journey back from Azure Peak, and had seen the changes in him, the weight of the decision he'd made, and the toll it had taken on him. Elon didn't look at her. His mind was far away, filled with thoughts of Mo Ran, the Night Lotus cult, and the storm that had only begun to brew. "I thought it would be over after rejecting the heart," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "I thought once I made the choice, things would calm down. But I was wrong." Yu Ling walked over and stood beside him, looking out over the water as well. She didn't answer immediately. She knew better than anyone that the path Elon had chosen was a dangerous one, fraught with consequences. The forces at play were far larger than he could understand. "The heart is not a simple power," she said finally, her voice steady. "It's a force that shapes the world, but it's also a tool, and tools are only as dangerous as the hands that wield them. Mo Ran has his own reasons for pursuing it, but he is not the only one." Elon turned to her, his eyes searching hers for answers. "Who else is after it?" he asked. "Who else is pulling the strings?" Yu Ling hesitated before answering, her eyes clouded with something darker, something that Elon hadn't seen before. "There are others," she said quietly, "ancient forces that have always existed in the shadows. The heart is a key to their power, and Mo Ran is just one player in a much larger game." Elon's chest tightened as her words sank in. The stakes were higher than he had thought, and the path ahead was more dangerous than he could have imagined. "So what now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What am I supposed to do?" Yu Ling looked at him with a mixture of compassion and concern, but also a quiet resolve. "Now, you must learn to understand the forces at play and learn to control the power you still hold. Balance isn't just about rejecting power. It's about knowing how to use it when necessary. And right now, you are more connected to the heart than you think. Mo Ran will come for you, but there are others who may seek you out as well. And when that time comes, you must be ready." That night, after Yu Ling had left him to his thoughts, Elon stood alone under the stars, the weight of her words pressing on his chest. The forces, ancient, powerful, and dangerous, were moving beneath the surface, and whether he liked it or not, he was now part of that world. He couldn't escape it. The heart, the power he had rejected, was still a part of him, and it was calling to him. He could feel it, deep in his bones, as if the universe itself were pushing him toward a destiny he could not avoid. Mo Ran's shadow loomed larger with each passing day, and the world felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the storm to break. As the days passed, things in the village grew stranger. People began to talk of strange figures traveling through the nearby mountain passes. Cultists. There were whispers of rituals, of dark magic being practiced in secret. And though the villagers were frightened, they said little, as if afraid that even speaking of it might summon something worse. One night, as the village settled into its uneasy routine, a figure cloaked in black appeared at the edge of the village. The figure walked with purpose, their footsteps echoing in the silence of the night. Chapter 12. The Unseen Hand. The village was quieter than usual that night, as if the very air was holding its breath. Elon stood outside his home, watching the dark silhouette of the cloaked figure moving through the narrow streets. The figure's presence was unsettling, their movements deliberate, almost as if they were searching for something, or someone. Elon's instincts flared. He had felt the tension growing in the air for weeks, ever since Moran had warned him about the storm that was coming, and now it seemed the storm had arrived. The figures stopped in front of a nearby house, their form blending into the shadows, and for a moment, Elon wondered if they had seen him. He wasn't sure who the figure was or what they wanted, but he knew this wasn't an ordinary traveler. "Yu Ling," he whispered to himself, "I need to find her." He quickly moved through the village, following the figure at a distance, careful to remain out of sight. His thoughts were scattered. Moran, the Night Lotus cult, and the strange forces gathering around him. The world had changed, and he was no longer the simple boy from Qinghe village. He was a player in a much larger game, one that he didn't fully understand yet. The figure continued through the village until they reached the edge, where the mountain path began. They paused, as if waiting for something, or someone. Elon watched from behind a tree, his heart pounding in his chest. The figure's hood was drawn tightly, obscuring their face. But there was something about their posture, something purposeful, as though they were not just passing through, but had a mission. Suddenly, the figure turned, and Elon froze, caught in their gaze. But instead of confronting him, the figure merely nodded once, a gesture almost like recognition, and then, without a word, they turned and walked into the darkness of the mountain path, disappearing into the night. Elon stood frozen for a moment, his thoughts a whirlwind. Who was that? And why had they looked at him like they knew him? "This isn't over," he muttered to himself, his voice strained with the weight of the unknown. As Elon made his way back toward the village center, he found Yu Ling waiting by the river, her silhouette outlined against the pale moonlight. She had been watching, waiting for him to return. "What happened?" she asked as soon as she saw him. Her eyes narrowed with concern. Who was that figure? Elon shook his head, his mind still reeling. "I don't know," he admitted, "but they were looking for something, or someone. I think they knew I was watching." Yu Ling didn't respond immediately. Instead, she stepped closer, her gaze turning serious. "The forces are closing in, Elon," she said, her voice low but filled with quiet urgency. "Moran's game is unfolding, and others are moving as well. You can feel it, can't you?" Elon nodded, his throat dry. He had felt it for weeks now, a sense of growing unease, a pressure in the air that had only grown since his decision to reject the heart. But now, standing there with Yu Ling, the weight of the truth finally hit him. "It's all connected, isn't it?" he asked. "The heart, Moran, the cults, they're all moving toward something, and I'm part of it." Yu Ling looked at him with a mixture of pity and resolve. "Yes," she said softly, "and the forces are gathering. The heart is but a piece of the puzzle, but it is the key to something far larger. Moran is one of the many players, but there are others who are just as dangerous." Elon swallowed hard. The world he had stepped into was far darker than he had imagined, and yet there was no going back. "So what do I do now?" he asked, his voice tight. Yu Ling's eyes darkened as she looked toward the mountains, her expression far older than her years. "You must prepare yourself," she said. "You have already made your choice. The question now is whether you can live with it, and whether you can find a way to stop the storm before it consumes everything." As the night deepened, the winds began to pick up, carrying with them the scent of something distant, something ancient. The air had shifted again, and Elon could feel the change. The village felt more vulnerable, more exposed to the forces now stirring in the shadows. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the storm was coming, and it would change everything. Meanwhile, far from the quiet streets of Qinghe village, in a hidden chamber beneath the Night Lotus cult's stronghold, Mo Ran stood before a map spread across a stone table, his fingers tracing the lines that marked the various locations of power in the realm. His expression was focused, calculating. "The boy," he murmured to himself, his voice low and filled with anticipation. But now he will be forced to face the consequences. The map in front of him glowed faintly, the symbols etched into it representing the movement of power throughout the world. The heart was no longer in Elon's possession, but its influence had already spread, rippling outward like a wave across the land. Mo Ran's eyes flicked to a particular symbol on the map, a small, pulsing light near Qinghe village. "The heart may be lost to me for now," Mo Ran whispered, "but the pieces are already in motion, and I know where they will lead." His fingers paused over a symbol marking Elon's location, the pulsing light growing stronger with each passing moment. "Elon," Mo Ran said, his voice soft with dark amusement, "you think you've rejected the power, but the power has already claimed you, and when you realize it, it will be too late." In the heart of Qinghe village, Elon stood in the moonlight, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision. The shadows around him seemed to grow darker with each passing moment, the pull of the unknown ever stronger. He knew that his journey had only just begun. The storm was gathering, and no matter how hard he fought, there would be no escaping it. As the winds howled through the trees, Elon felt a coldness settle in his chest. Mo Ran, the Night Lotus cult, the forces moving in the dark, they were all connected, and they were all closing in. And the world was waiting for him to choose once again.